Hey, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, or should I say the pre show. We are on StreamYard now, so I do hope that you all will please know that you can see this live on YouTube, on Facebook, on several channels. Okay, the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show, that is the article, the Santita Jackson Show, the Santita Jackson Show. So please go over there and like and subscribe. You can also stream. We're streaming on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, Santita Jackson and Friends, and we're streaming on the Santita Jackson page and the Reverend Jesse Jackson Senior page. And let me see what else. I think we are also on Twitter. So there we go. We got a lot going on, everybody. So thank you, Barbara Jean. Be well and safe. Sending everybody much love today. So please like and share on Facebook, like and share, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Today, hey, Shirley from Philadelphia, joining Barbara Jean and Samantha. Good morning, good morning. Hey, Jewel, what's going on? Hey. We're going to have Rodney Ellis, the commissioner, Harris County commissioner from Texas, to talk to us about what is happening in Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma. I mean, we're looking at and Oregon. Oregon, more than 100,000 people are without power in Oregon. Yeah, so think about that. I mean, and this could happen in Chicago, which is where I am based, here at WCPT, or it could happen in New York, where I have spent a lot of kind of lived there in non-COVID times, and Minneapolis, St. Paul, my home to the north, on AM 950 radio. We had a lieutenant governor here who became governor, Pat Quinn, who campaigned years ago, certainly within the past 15 years. He was campaigning to push to modernize our infrastructure. He said all of these power lines that we have above ground in Chicago and all around the country are very dangerous. We are a storm away from a disaster. And so many people don't think of the worst case scenarios. I think that's probably a very human thing. But we're going to talk with Rodney Ellis about that, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, to find out what is going on. At least 300 people in his county have been hospitalized because of carbon monoxide poisoning. People are doing all kinds of things to get warm. Can you imagine? There's no power. So they have no water, nothing in their homes, nothing. They're trying to figure out how to melt the snow so they can get something to drink. That means you can't flush the toilet. I mean, think about this, everybody. No power. The grid is down. Hey, Brian, how you doing? And then we're going to talk. But first, we're going to talk with Ashley Harrington. Well, of course, we're going to have good news with Reverend Jeanette Wilson. And then we're going to go right into COVID-19, some questions that we have for Dr. Deborah Holden. Did you know that the COVID-19 cases have dropped by 16%, according to the World Health Organization? That's good news. Now they're pushing monoclonal antibodies, which is what President Trump took, and they're saying that prevents, that is known to prevent deaths. So it's kind of interesting, how the narrative shifts, how we hear about vaccines, but now we're beginning to hear about the monoclonal antibodies. But no one's talking about the vitamin D, which is what they are using over in Europe and in other parts of the world. So, Reverend Wilson, Reverend Attorney Wilson, how are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just saying hello to everybody here on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. Why don't you say hello to everybody, Reverend Wilson?
Good morning. I'm so happy to be with you this morning.
Oh,
we do have some good news.
We do have some. I can't wait to hear it. And we do have some good. Well, no, I mean we need it. We need it because these are some. We thought that 2020 was over. Ha, you guys. Ha ha ha. It keeps on marching on, everybody. It keeps on marching on. So we're going to be talking about student loan debt. We're going to talk with Attorney Ashley Harrington from the Center for Responsible Lending. What about the $50,000? Should it be $10,000? Should it be $50,000? Should it be higher than that? A lot of people, they are saying that the racial wealth gap.
1 minute.
A lot of that you can lay at the feet of student loan debt. And then, of course, we will be talking with Dr. Max Wolf about all of that, the brilliant Dr. Max Wolf. So we got a full show today, everybody, and so let us get right to it. We're coming up inside of a minute.
At the Porsche Exchange, expect the exceptional. Visit us at 4Porsche.com. The number 4, Porsche.com.
Okay.
License and doctor. See dealer for details.
Finding great candidates to
Okay,
hire
here
can
we
be
are.
like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack.
30.
Not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a
15.
job on ZipRecruiter get a quality
Thank
candidate
you.
within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. My neighbors to the north, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's great to be with you today as we talk about the student loan debt crisis. What are you going to push for? What are you going to push for? Do we need $50,000 or $10,000 of debt to be forgiven or more? Now's the time to push for it. If they can bail out these banks for $20 trillion plus, they certainly can bail out Americans. So we're going to be talking about that and what's happening in Texas, because what's happening in Texas, the failure of that power grid, could happen to people like you and me. It really, really could happen. And of course, Dr. Max Wolf will be on with us to really wrap all of this up. And let us not forget Dr. Deborah Furholden, and of course, good news with Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Esquire. Let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Today in Chicago, we're going to have some snow, but we will have a high of 18 degrees. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 17 degrees. It will be cloudy. The Dow closed up 90 points yesterday. The S&P 500 closed down a point, and the NASDAQ closed down 82 points. Rush Limbaugh, conservative radio provocateur. Indeed, many people called him America's anchorman. Whether you liked him or loathed him, you cannot deny his impact upon the medium of radio. You cannot. And he made his transition yesterday, died at 70, of course. Last year, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom because President Trump knew that his time was drawing nigh. The cause was complications of lung cancer. And like him or loathe him, he was a brilliant broadcaster. He was that. I cannot take that away from him, and I pray for his family. And we must always do that, whether we agree with people or not. Let us not lose our humanity in this struggle. Ice everywhere as Texans wake up to cold. Is it 2 million? Is it 5 million? The real size of the blackouts are a mystery, according to this MSN report. But this power grid failure has killed at least 20 people. Some people say it's 30 people, and the numbers are growing, and millions still remain out without power today. They say it's down to a little bit more than a million, but it's misery. It's misery. This has wreaked untold havoc on people's homes. And now more snow and ice is on the way. And guess what? It's going to be in the 60s there next week. You cannot make this stuff up, everybody. But there are different stories that are coming out about what is going on down there. Governor Greg Abbott, when asked when Texans will have power again, he said that is information that has not been provided to me, quote unquote. Wow. So, and then the blame game is all over the place. Who's going to take responsibility for this? Texas leaders failed to heed warnings that left the state's power grid vulnerable to winter extremes. Remember, Texas is alone they have a go it alone policy. They're the greatest energy producers that the United States has, and yet because they want to avoid federal regulations, they don't share their energy with anyone, and when they're in trouble, no one shares their energy with them. Wow. Maybe they will rethink that. In the meantime, the deep freeze has sent Texas electricity prices soaring by a rate of 10,000%. Harris County, which is inclusive of Houston, which is about to overtake Chicago as the third largest city in the country, 300 plus carbon monoxide cases. We're going to be asking Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis what is going on down there and how they are doing. Indeed, how he is doing, because guess what? His family, he had no power also. He had no power, but he has a son who lives in Austin, and it was very interesting. His son passed along a picture that he passed on to me. Downtown, where his son lives, had power, but the other side of town did not have power. Go figure, everybody. Keep pushing. That is what AOC and many progressives are saying after President Biden told the nation that he will not cancel $50,000 in student loan debt. People are saying that we can and must go big. We have to push the president. Indeed, student loan debt is at a record high $1.6 trillion, everybody. $1.6 trillion, and is considered to be a main driver of the racial wealth gap. The pandemic has cut the U.S. life expectancy by a year during the first half of 2020. That is good news. And the World Health Organization said that last week, COVID-19 cases were down 16%. Why are they dropping so fast? Cannot wait to talk with Dr. Deborah Furholden about that. And what about these monoclonal antibodies that are now being pushed as a therapeutic? They're saying that they are saving lives with monoclonal antibodies. So you tell me what you think. And with power and fortitude, Naomi Osaka beat her idol Serena Williams, who is looking for that elusive 24th Grand Slam. She's already the greatest of all time, but she had, I tell you, this young woman who modeled herself after her. Was outplayed by her, 6'3", 6'4". And of course, Serena Williams was very emotional afterwards, but boy, has Serena Williams given us so many thrills. And one of the pieces that we are missing here is this. Serena Williams has played in more Grand Slams than any woman player in history. She has made it to the finals or the semifinals more than any woman in history, everybody. So let's get right to some good news with Reverend Jeanette Wilson. Oh my goodness, we need something good. You got to give me something. The pastor of the Maple Park United Methodist Church. Of course, you are with Rainbow Push, but in this capacity, you're the pastor. So give us some good news, Reverend.
The good news is Psalm 34. I like this psalm because here you have David King running away from Saul. He's being chased. He goes to a king of Gath to hide, and he pretends to be insane. Oftentimes when we are under pressure and stress, we do all kinds of things. That's why I love David, because David is really human. David did everything that and thought everything that any of us could possibly think. He's a type of Christ, so to speak. So anyway, David says, I will bless the Lord at all times. This is while he's being pursued. This is while he's pretending to be insane. His praises shall continuously be in my mouth in spite of my circumstance. So he opens up his prayer not with asking God for anything. He's saying, I'm going to praise God anyhow. Not when I'm up, not when things look good, not when it's not snowing, not when there's no blizzard, there's no storm. In the midst of the storm, I will praise the Lord. Every time, all times, not sometimes, not when I feel like it, not when I'm not depressed. While you're depressed, while you're sheltered in, while you're confused, and while you're negative, and while you're fearful. Then he says, why? Because I remember what God has done for me. He drove away all of my fears. He removed so many things from me. So you have to take refuge in what God has already done for you. You have to rethink, reflect, remember, recollect those thoughts and those memories, not from 30 years ago, from right yesterday, what God has done for you. And then he says, even the king of the jungle suffers and has struggles, the lion. That's in verse number 10. Mm-hmm. But God took care of the lion. So God is no respecter of persons. Even the highest, people with titles, they're going to go through. They're going through. You look at COVID, it doesn't care whether you are a president, a mayor, a governor. It doesn't have any limits, but God is ever present. That's why David then says, oh, taste and see. You try God for yourself. Well, people are not going to try a God that you can't celebrate when you're going through. If you're in the hospital cursing God because you're sick, why would you think the patient in the next bed would follow your God. That God ain't helping you. You don't feel good about it. You don't believe that the God can deliver you. If you're broke and people are broke around you and you sitting up there having a pity party, people are like, I ain't following that God. I'm not going to that church because that God is not working for this person. We have to be a living witness of what God can do and believing that God can in the midst of our problems, not when you're up, not when everything is going well, when you are in the midst. Can you then trust God? Oh, taste and see. The Lord is good.
Amen. Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Esquire, educator, civil rights activist, civil rights lawyer. But she's a pastor of the Maple Park United Methodist Church here in Chicago, and you can catch her on Sundays live on her Facebook page. Sending you much love. Thank you for that good news, because we do need to be reminded that we need to praise God at all times, because God is ever present and is too kind to be cruel and too wise to make a mistake. Dr. Deborah Holden, welcome to the show. As I welcome you, we are wishing Joyce Anderson a happy birthday. Hey, Joyce. Oh, this is your birthday. It's your day, girl. Everybody, wish her a happy birthday. And everybody, please continue to like and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And you can watch us. We're streaming live over there. We're streaming over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and the Santita Jackson page, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. page, and on Twitter at Santita J, and at the Santita J Show. That's right. So please like me over on Twitter too, or however you affirm people. Dr. Deb, how you doing? Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. That's the only way they can get you over there. Well, that and the Flint crisis. To bring you out of Johns Hopkins so you can help somebody. That's one of the things that we love about our Dr. Deborah Holden, that is. Dr. Deb, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, because the World Health Organization said that last week the COVID-19 cases fell by 16%. That's good news. Now we're hearing more about the monoclonal antibodies. And I heard a doctor this morning on television say affirmatively, this treatment saves lives. Is there a movement to include therapeutics, shall I say, in this, as you said, the Swiss cheese model, in this basket of 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 medicines that we can throw at COVID-19 to save our lives?
Not so much, actually. And good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
But the great thing I love about the Swiss cheese model is it's for us to say, right? So we get to say and this is why I really love to tell people, plan your work your plan, right? So what are the layers of protection that people are going to use in their own life? There are the layers of protection that exist in society. You know, some of the governmental support, some of the occupational and environmental protections that have been put in place. You know, I think it would be great for people to think about for themselves, what do I need? What's available for me to maximize my health during this pandemic? And chances are, these will also be the things that will sustain people and support people even beyond the pandemic. I've really, really, really realized that we have an opportunity here to elevate a conversation around health and people's health and well-being that is unparalleled. Most people haven't talked about basic indicators of well-being. I have been completely surprised when I tell people, you know, we got the 3 W's, right? Wash your hands, wear a mask, watch your distance. And then I tell people, eat, sleep, move. Eat high nutrient dense diet. Most people don't even know what that is. They don't know what a nutrient dense food is, you know? And I thought, man, if we could get people, and don't get me wrong, this is not like rocket science or new information, but maybe it's a new opportunity for people to hear information that they already heard, but have it actually impact and shape and influence their behaviors. You know, I'm doing a town hall today, and one of the questions that was posed in advance is, why is diabetes a risk factor for a bad outcome with COVID? Because diabetes doesn't affect the respiratory system and some other things. And I thought, there's no entirely clear biological mechanism that explains that. But what we do know is the healthier you are, if you get exposed, the better you do.
Mm.
And it's funny because it's actually the risk factor is not just having diabetes. The real risk factor is unmanaged diabetes. So it's not just having an illness, it's that illness not being managed. Because when you have illness that's not managed, your body doesn't function optimally. And when you are exposed to a foreign pathogen, your body has to respond to it. And if it's not in tip-top fighting shape, well, the response isn't going to be as great. It's like trying to work or lift up, heavy things when you're really tired, And so I really, this conversation about not just therapeutics, but really what should people be focusing on and what should and could people be doing to promote their health right now, I think is a really important conversation. It's a really, really important conversation. And independent of COVID, because remember, we're going to have to learn to live with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this since this thing started. COVID is going to be with us forever now. It's going to ultimately become endemic to our society. The vaccine and the vaccination will likely become something very, very similar with flu vaccination. And we'll see people getting vaccinated, annually. And so we're going to have to learn to live with it. And I think we're going to have to learn how to really boost our own health so that we're just in fighting shape for something that now is just a part of us. It's a part of our society. I don't think this is ever going away.
But it's very interesting that you said that it's not the diabetes, it's the unmanaged diabetes. It's not, I guess,
Mhm.
the comorbidities, it's when they're not managed, right?
Yep.
Okay, no, I mean, because we need to know that because most of us don't go get an annual physical. Uh, Most of us don't have access to that private doctor. I mean, our medical system is really, it's just not friendly to patients who don't have money and access. You know that. Uh, and so, where do we begin? Where do we begin as the World Health Organization is telling us, well, everybody be, yesterday it was, don't get your hopes up too high. But today I wake up to the news that the COVID-19 cases have fallen 16% in a week. What is that? Is that the vaccines? Is it the ebb and flow of a virus? Is it something I'm missing? Do we know yet?
Well, there's some circadian rhythm to a virus in a way, and then there's also all the things that are happening at the same time. So remember, the vaccine, we already had a lot of things in place, and I will say, by the way, some other countries have been able to get this pandemic in their country under control without having the same level of access to the vaccine. But if you add all of these layers, the thinking is multiple layers improve success. So as you start to put those layers on, simultaneously, then you can actually get things under control. We did that already in my county. Our restaurants just opened back up and they're only on 25% capacity like 2 weeks ago. We've had 12 consecutive weeks of decline. 12 consecutive weeks of decline in COVID cases. Our community case rate is just at about 3% right now. And I'm really hoping that next week we fall well under that 3% mark. Our kids haven't gone back to school yet. Our kids are going back to school February 22nd. But we had a plan in place and we charted a path to get to where we are so that these things could happen. The problem with other places is they were focused on profits, not people, because you're trying to reignite the economy and not trying to figure out how to simultaneously protect people's health. And so you got a lot of places, and I think Chicago kind of falls into this, who've been on a yo-yo, up and down and up and down and up and down, or even worse, some places who have been going up. And it doesn't make sense because the measures that we know to implement, if you implement those measures, everybody, we would have seen bigger national declines over the last 3 months. And instead, people are just sort of catching up. But you see, if you look at the data, certain states and certain counties have been doing well for many, many months. Now, some of the other places are catching up, and the world is catching up. The vaccine has added something to that, but our decreases started before the vaccine.
Well, that's why I want to ask you, because now we're seeing that 1/3 of the military have refused the vaccine, and that information came out late yesterday. And people said that they're still looking. And we had a young woman in New York City who was fired from her job as a waitress in a restaurant because the restaurant mandated that everybody get a vaccine. She said, "Look, my pushback is that I'm of childbearing age. I support vaccines, but I need to know how this would impact fertility." Um, I have a couple minutes left. What do you? These are people. I don't think I think that you're right. They're not hesitant. They're looking for information. I mean, what can be done? Um, should we expand the conversation to include monoclonal antibodies, to include the discussion about vitamin D, which they're talking a discussion they're having overseas, but interestingly enough, even though it is the Black and Indian and people of color who are being targeted for vitamin D distribution overseas, that conversation hasn't gotten over here, even though we two are the vulnerable populations over here. What can happen to move this along? I have a couple of minutes, and they belong to you.
Well, a couple of things. So one, we're seeing a lot more information and a lot of good information coming out of the CDC. But I tell people the CDC is not the end all be all, right? The CDC lost their footing in the last administration. They're regaining that footing. I've always told people the CDC is full of some of the most brilliant scientists and epidemiologists and physicians and clinician scientists and all of that we have in our country. They are there. They lost their footing. So the CDC has grown and sort of not grown, but regained, recaptured, reclaimed their role as a leading source of trusted and credible information. But as you start to get into more nuanced things, the first thing is everybody needs a healthcare provider. Everybody needs a healthcare provider. And I do believe our system really treats sick people and doesn't focus enough on prevention and wellness overall.
1 minute.
There's a movement afoot. So I'm not saying that your physician is the end all be all or your healthcare provider is the end all be all, but everybody should have a healthcare provider because they should be a partner with you in maintaining your wellness and promoting your wellness. If you're pregnant, and I'm dealing with it, my daughter is pregnant. She opted to not get the vaccine. We went to the trusted source for obstetrics, which is the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, ACOG. ACOG, that's their
30.
jam, right? Everything related to fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and all of that. It is a national organization. It's really funny. My aunt used to work for ACOG. So I used to hang out in the ACOG office in D.C. when I was
15.
folding pamphlets and stuff like that.
But
my point is, they're
10.
trusted sources of information. Look for the professional societies if you have
5.
specific concerns, and partner with the healthcare provider. They are a member of the team.
Stay right there. Talking about student loan debt on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. I want you to finish your thought for the audience because Bab just said that COVID impacts male fertility. I mean, there are a lot of, as you know, there are a lot of very credible physicians who've raised a lot of questions with, they've presented some pretty strong cases about the vaccine, as it's been called, and people are looking for answers. They really are, and so.
Well, but let me call out one thing though about the vaccine. Let me call out one thing about the vaccine that's very practical that I need people to understand.
Okay.
The vaccine is giving you the two that are out. The next 3 vaccines that are coming out, we can't do that now, are built on a different technology. The 2 that are out right now are mRNA vaccines. It's not live virus, not the whole virus molecule. It's simply the spike protein. Okay? So whatever response and reaction you're going to have from the vaccine, realize if you get the virus, you're not just getting the spike protein. You're getting all the spike proteins on that molecule and the virus itself which will get into your cell vis-a-vis that spike protein. That spike protein is the key, and it will unlock your cell, and the whole molecule will enter into your cell, and that may actually impact DNA and RNA. So whatever the concern is that people have about being injected with this piece of it, this spike protein that helps your body then build that immune response, that versus the alternative of being infected with the virus is night and day. This is giving you the smallest, safest exposure that you can get to get your body's immune response.
Well, hold on.
So I can only envision that people who've had the vaccine and had a response, the reaction would have likely been substantially worse if they had gotten the virus itself. So I want people to think about that. You're just getting a little piece of it with the vaccine. If you get exposed to the virus, you're getting the full Monty. So people need to keep that in mind. You would much rather have the vaccine than the virus. And in the absence of a mitigation response early on that would have prevented mass exposure and all of the cases and deaths that we've seen, this is like the plan B, right? So I just want to make sure that people are clear about that. But the vaccine is just a piece of what the virus is.
But see, let me tell you why they're not clear. As I welcome Attorney Harrington to the show. I'm so glad that you're back with us, Attorney Ashley Harrington, as we talk about these student loan debt. How you doing, Attorney Harrington?
I am good. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, please. I'm so glad you're here. And my father sends his best regards to you. I have Dr. Deborah Holden, who's the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. Brilliant epidemiologist out of Johns Hopkins. She's at Michigan State creating their School of Public Health, quite frankly. And she's also been working in New York and in Maryland and in the city of Flint and and with the state of Michigan, helping with their COVID-19 response. And she's had a tremendous amount of success. You all should know each other. You should know each other. So stay right here because I'm coming right to student loan debt. Dr. Deb, stay right here. Because she is also an activist, Attorney Harrington. She's a cane raiser. She's a cane raiser. She gives the devil
15.
I love it.
Oh, I know you do because you do the same thing.
10. 5.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The voice of progressive Minnesota, and Facebook and my Santita Jackson and Friends page, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. page, and the Santita Jackson page. But guess what? I'm on YouTube again. Yay, yay. The Santita Jackson Show. Please go over there and like and subscribe, everybody. We're going to be, as we roll things out, we're going to put some more programming up there, but we want you to know that you can see the whole show now over on Facebook. Over on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm so happy about that. And I've got a new Twitter handle, The Santita J Show, at The Santita J Show. So please, everybody, please join me over there too. Of course, I'm still at Santita J, but at The Santita J Show, want you to be a part of that as well. What happened the other night at the town hall? At the town hall, President Biden said, I'm not even, the $50,000 cancellation of student debt, that's a non-starter for me. And people are saying, wait a minute, we've got to keep pushing because student loan debt is a millstone around our necks. It is a driver of the racial wealth gap. So I said, well, you know what? Let me go to someone who is absolutely brilliant and who is really, Dr. Deb, she is a fighter in this space, and no one knows more about the impact of student loan debt upon Black people and brown people and poor white people. People cannot discharge this debt. We've got Attorney Ashley Harrington. She's the Senior Policy Counsel at the Center for Responsible Lending, and I want to welcome you to this show. Of course, met when virtually on Reverend Jesse Jackson's radio show. I'm so glad that you're over here. And thank you, Charles Ellison, my buddy from Philadelphia, who said, "You've got to get her on." He said, I said, wait, I think I know her. I think I know her. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, we had a good time yesterday on Charles' show. So thank you
Oh,
for having
oh,
me back.
know that you have a new home here. And of course, Dr. Deborah Holden, who's still listening, she is, as you see, an associate dean, and so she sees up close and personal. She went through Johns Hopkins, got her PhD at 24 on a full scholarship. And I
Nice.
was, oh, and I was having a conversation with State Senator Nina Turner, who's running for Congress now, and she was talking about student loan debt. She said, "Well, that's something you and I could relate to." I said, "No, I can't, because I got a full scholarship to college and I accepted it." My mother said, "If you notice, each one of you went where you could afford to go." Because, contrary to popular belief, my parents were not wealthy people. And my mother
Mhm.
said, "I need you to." When I went to my high school as a freshman, she said, "I need you to do well here and earn scholarships to college." And thank goodness I don't have 50, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 worth of debt around my neck because of her, because she did that with all five of us, right? So I want to know from you, what is it? Why is this? Why did this declaration by the president uh, raise such a fuss when he said $50,000 of student debt? I'm open to maybe 10,000 discharging that, but 50,000, no way. What's the problem?
For a lot of reasons. First, let's just start with the fact that we were saying $10,000. A minimum of $10,000. Doing CRL works with civil rights groups, NAACP, National Urban League, Leadership Conference of Civil and Human Rights, Unidos US, in July of 2019 on a report, and we called for a minimum of $10,000. You know what's happened since July 2019? An entire pandemic, right? Like the
Yes.
world has been open. Jobs and businesses have been lost that will never be regained. People's lives have been changed forever. The economy is changed forever. And the same way the student debt crisis itself was disproportionately impacting communities of color, just like y'all have been talking about all morning, so has this crisis and the economic recession. So $10,000 no longer will cut it. That's just not enough anymore for the devastation and insecurity that families are facing. The other piece that got us, a little upset is, we want a commitment from the president that he's going to do this. We shouldn't have to wait for Congress to do more. We've seen what happens when we wait for Congress to do something. And this is, the thing about student debt cancellation is over 90% of the outstanding $1.7 trillion in student debt is federal student debt. This is a federal government problem with a federal solution, and the president himself can cancel this debt. He can do something about
No,
it.
back up,
He is
back
the
up, back
single
up. Back up. You need to explain this because you got my line sister, Stephanie Howard Ireland, all riled up. She and I were. We were in high school and college together, and she is my ride or die today. She said if they can bail out corporations for billions, they can bail out students who educated themselves uh, to become better contributors to society. I hear you,
Well,
Stephanie.
I don't
But
disagree with that. I don't
what
disagree
is
with
this?
that.
You said it's a federal. This is a federal issue, and is this? It's so. Are you saying that an executive order could explain that? Because I don't quite understand that.
There is already authority granted to the president under statute by Congress to, that enables him to cancel this debt. He can do this through executive action, right? And so because of that, because he already has this power, why wait for Congress? Why wait for things to, make their way through? That's how long it took to get that additional $600, right? Like we were waiting until December for that, right? So why should student loan borrowers have to wait any longer? Congress has things to work on that they have to do. The president has something that he can do. He can take this single, bold, productive, and progressive action and help millions of borrowers with the stroke of a pen. That's amazing. There are so few things that a president can do on his own that will have that level of impact. And so we're encouraging him to use that authority. Go ahead and take those steps and help as many borrowers as you can.
If he did that, so he does not have to go through Congress. In fact, this is something that is really within his power to do. And who would have an interest in him not discharging this debt? Who benefits from these persons continuing to have this debt? Is it the banks? I mean, help me. Who's winning? Because the people are losing, but somebody's winning here.
Listen, and you're right, because we basically created a student loan industrial complex, right? We built up a system around this debt finance higher education model, which was not the vision that Lyndon B. Johnson had when he created and put forth the ACA in 1965. That was not his vision. His vision was a system based primarily on grant aid for low-income students and students of color, for Black students in particular. His vision was that Black students would have unprecedented access to higher education in a way that would lead them to economic opportunity and financial security. So this debt finance model, where 70% of the class of 2016 borrowed, 85% of the Black class of 2016 borrowed, and they're borrowing an average of $30K for the entire class, and about $34 to $35K for Black graduates. That wasn't the ideal, and people aren't making progress paying it back. 10, 20 years later, people haven't even touched their principals. So that wasn't the idea behind it. And so we say a system where, it's not just the institutions and the students anymore. We've got servicers, right? We've got these huge multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies that service student loans. We've got debt collectors who collect on behalf of the government if you default on a loan. There's just so many people involved now than just the government, the institution, and the student. And so, yes, there are folks who do have an economic interest in keeping this going, but we, the public, have an economic interest in a higher education system that works and that is well invested in, so that when people go to college, they then leave college. They can graduate and leave college and pursue financial security. They can put money back into the economy. They can buy houses, start businesses, save for retirement. When they do that, that helps everybody. But they're not able to do that right now. And Black borrowers in particular aren't able to do that because we're saddled with this debt for decades.
What does student debt look like? How does it impact your life? Let's bring it down to the personal level. And I want everyone to call me. I know somebody out here, Chapearl, Renee, because you all are making some really, really profound comments. Is it Eddie, James Royal, Tanya, everybody, Jewel? Please call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. You can also text to that number. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. Did you know that the president can discharge this debt, can eliminate this debt with the stroke of a pen? Now, he could write an executive order about this, but that's why I'm asking Attorney Harrington, wait a minute, who has skin in the game? Because there's a lot going on here. But what does student loan debt, what does it look like? Because you have posited that this is something that is a driver. Student loan debt is a driver of the racial wealth gap.
Absolutely. So Black students in particular are more likely to borrow more and struggle in repayment. And it goes back to everything we already know about the inability and actual policy decisions to prevent Black people from ever being able to build wealth. Because we don't have wealth, because we've never had access to capital and affordable credit and resources in the same way that our white counterparts have, we don't have that cushion. We don't have anything to draw into when we get ready to go to school. And so there is a very big difference. And so I get so frustrated when folks are like, well, let's make income cut off. Let's leave out high income borrowers. There is a very real difference between income and wealth. And when you don't have wealth, an income can mean very different things for one family who has wealth and a family who doesn't. And we know that Black families have a tenth of the wealth of white families. Latino families have an eighth of the wealth of white families. So when we're experiencing, even if somehow we're able to get to the same income level as our white counterparts, which it takes us more education to do and more time because of labor market discrimination, even then, we don't have the wealth to cushion it out and back it up. And we have so many other things we're doing, right? We don't have the intergenerational wealth. So sometimes we have to help our parents or grandparents or the other way around. It's not the same as other families. No, we don't pass down wealth. We pass down debt. And that compounds on each other. And so whereas most families would be able to, borrow against home equity, our home ownership rate is the same today as it was before the Fair Housing Act. We don't have home equity to tap into. We lost home equity. We lost $1 trillion of wealth after the Great Recession that has never been regained, right? And so all of that is impacting this as this driving grower, this driving the growth of student debt. You know, we've got predatory for-profit colleges out here that prey on students of color, Black students, veterans, women, low-income students, and they, you know, with these costly degrees that are very low quality, and if someone graduates at all. And so there's all these compounding pieces that are building on top of each other. And so, and when we say for Black folks, this is an intergenerational problem, you've got parents who are taking out Parent Plus loans to help their kids go to school while they're still paying off their own debt, or they're having to go back to school and take out new loans while their kids still have debt, right? And so it's just a cyclical pattern, and we can't get out of it because, you know, we can't pay it off. There's no way. It's unsustainable. There's no way we pay this off. But what does happen is we end up in repayment for 20 or more years, and this debt is just sitting on our bank accounts, on our credit, on our minds, and it's preventing us from moving forward.
And, you know, Stephanie Ireland, you need to call in, Soror, because you are she's one of the top real estate agents in the DMV, you know, in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And she is part of Stephanie's mission is to get young Blacks and to get Black people into home ownership. She said one of the big blocks is student loan debt. Let me bring up Chapearl because she has jumped off the pages of Facebook and YouTube to speak to you, Attorney Harrington, because she is hot today. Chapearl Wells, how you doing?
Hey, good morning, Santita. Good morning, Morning Stars. And Attorney Harrington. Honey, girl, I promise you, I just got hot mad. Said with a stroke of a pen, my life could be so much simpler. So you right? I mean, all he has to do is put this in an executive, or not only Biden. Let's not just. I mean, Obama could have did it. Trump could have did it. Clinton could have did it. All these people could have. Because I've had this debt for like 30 years now, and now I'm getting more debt because I have 2 kids in college, so I'm getting this Parent Plus loan. So I need him to be very specific when he counsels his debt, because most of mine is the Parent Plus loan. So we're struggling to help our kids to be successful and taking out these extra debt. And I promise you, this is the easiest process to get in debt. All you have to do is just 3 clicks, 1, 2, 3, accept, and you have just been granted $40,000, and nobody asks any questions. And then they tell you, okay, would you like to forbear it for a little while? Oh, sure, no problem. Keep on adding. And then every 6 months they send you a notice to tell you what your real problem is. So I know with both girls, I'm probably up to $100,000 in student loan debt for Parent Plus loans. And you know what? Because you said what you said today, I do not feel bad sending them my $5 a month faithfully until I die, because they could actually eliminate this and make my life easier. I'm so mad. I just can't believe that all the presidents have this power and never did it to help us.
And you should be mad. You're not the only one, right? And you didn't have a choice because your kids got to go to college, right? We don't have the luxury of not going to college. You have to go to college to get these jobs nowadays, right? Like that's what it is. And so, if the only way you can go to college is you got to take on debt, your kids got to take on debt, how does it make sense? And he absolutely can do it. What folks don't realize is they've been doing it already. How do y'all think they paused these payments and waived this interest since March? That's the same authority he could use to cancel this debt. If he canceled $50,000 per borrower, like Senator Schumer and Warren and Representatives Presley, Omar, Adams, and Waters are calling for, that would cancel the debt of 75% of federal student loan borrowers, 95% of the people who are in default. Right? We could wipe that out.
And they're not getting the money anyway. Nobody.
It's not coming back. It's not coming back.
Come back anyway.
So let's just give everybody a free ride to college, and that's it.
But you know what? Wait, hold on, Attorney Harrington and Chaparral. It's not a free ride. It's an investment in our country's future. People,
Exactly.
we have to see, because we invest in bombs, but we don't invest in people. And we are paying the price for that. That's why we're going to have Harris County Commissioner from Texas, Rodney Ellis, on at the top of the hour. Because what's happening in Texas could happen any place, because the
It's a
American
mess.
Society of Civil Engineers gave America a D for our infrastructure. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
are not in good shape here. And you cannot have crumbling bridges, poisoned water, uneducated kids, or kids who can't get through the college system because they can't afford it. What is that? What is that? Oh, I want to make community colleges free. That's great. That's wonderful. But free? Wait a minute. You mean to tell me either I've got the University of Chicago, Chaparral, and Attorney Harrington, that's about to be $100,000 a year, undergrad per year. Who could afford that?
Mm-hmm.
Who could afford that? And that's
Nobody.
Columbia. I mean, it's all these schools, all the top tier schools. I mean, NYU's basically that. They're like $95,000 a year. Come on. And with a stroke of the pen, you're telling us with a stroke of the pen. And that makes what happened the other night all the more unbelievable, Attorney Harrington. I know your jaw must have
Mm-hmm.
dropped to the floor when he said, I absolutely won't do this. Huh.
It's right, and also just because when I think about who's struggling the most, right, and y'all, Color of Change put out a new survey poll yesterday where they surveyed black voters, as we know, who came out in droves to elect President Biden, who ran on this campaign of racial equity and economic stimulus. And this is something that does both of those. And this is something that, when we say it affects Black people, it really affects Black women the most. Like when we're talking about student debt, we're talking about with Black women.
Absolutely.
We're talking about us. And we're talking about the people who literally came out for President Biden. And so, and that shows up in this Color of Change survey. They say we care about higher education. We care about student debt. We are voting on this is an issue that we are voting based on. So we are watching to see what happens with student debt. That shows up directly in this Color of Change poll because it's impacting our lives every single day. And just, the other part is there's just a narrative out there that this is a rich kid's problem. Not the case. Not the case.
Mm-mm.
Right?
Absolutely.
This not rich, wealthy kids. They don't have student debt. They have parents. That they don't. That's not the same situation. This is a problem that regular folks are having. That people of color, that Black and brown borrowers are having. That is holding them back, and it's holding the economy back. And I love what you said about invest in people. Higher education should be a public good. We all will do well if these folks are no longer having to put hundreds of dollars a month on student debt that they could put into the economy right now. We need to be boosting consumer spending, helping people save for retirement, right? What does it look like if the money that you would have had to put towards student debt, you could put towards these other productive activities that benefit the entire economy?
Well,
That's a whole different ballgame.
absolutely. Let me bring up Thomas very quickly. I want to get at least a couple of callers in before we go because people want to talk about this. Thomas, what's on your mind?
Hello, Santita.
Good hearing your voice.
Hello.
Yes, it's good hearing your voice.
Can you
What's
hear
on
me?
your mind? Absolutely.
Yes, I wanted to call in about the student loan debt problem. Most of it is interest. A lot of it is interest. Oh God, I'm kind of nervous. So it's just my first time getting on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
But the most of it is interest, and a lot of times people think that it's more. So it's not just only a Black debt that's going on. It has a lot to do with most people that are in debt for student loans are white, actually.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
So, and they are loaded down with debt. But I'm going to explain one thing on how the debt goes, how that gets from $3,000 in debt. It's not the student loan itself; it's the interest that kills them. So this is the way how how they get to from $3,000 to $50,000. What they do is, student gets out of school. Usually, they don't have a job yet or whatever. They have a 6-month grace period to start paying on their loans. And most students are not working, so they can't pay on a student loan.
Right.
So by the time they get out of school, the loan is due after the 6 months. So that's when they start calling them. And by that time, they're behind already. They
Absolutely.
already,
But Thomas, I need you to
month
make,
or two behind.
honey, I need you to make your point because we're going to be going to break.
Okay, so what they do is they do what they call capitalized interest. They call them up, they tell them they want to file for a forbearance. That's real easy to do, just like she said. You just click one button and that's it. A forbearance capitalized interest means 3 times the interest.
So your point is,
say for instance, if it's on
no. So your point is what?
My point is they think that it's just that one interest. But what they do, say for instance, is $30. They take that $30 and they spread it over every month and each month of the life of the loan. So that $30 turns into $3,000 or whatever.
Well, hold that thought.
And every time they file for forbearance,
you're making a great point, Attorney Harrington. I got 2 minutes. They belong to you.
I mean, he's absolutely right. There's a major problem with how the system works, right? So, yes, there are all these things that can cause your interest to capitalize, meaning that it adds on to your original principal balance, and now you're getting interest on that original principal and the interest that was capitalized. So that's charging you more than ever. Most of the time, it can accrue without cap, right? And you go and folks go into forbearance, they think it's a good thing because their servicers aren't doing a good job of explaining it to them. They don't realize that at the end of that forbearance, your interest is accumulating and it's going to capitalize at the end. There's a difference between forbearance and deferment, but the servicers aren't doing a good job of explaining that. And they also don't realize that when you're in forbearance, that doesn't count towards your income-based repayment forgiveness, your public service loan forgiveness. That's why you've got folks paying repayment decades, and they're not, and it's not working. That's why you have so few people who have gotten public service loan forgiveness. You have so few people who have even gotten income-based repayment forgiveness because the system itself is broken. It's too complicated, and it doesn't make sense. And many folks, they're on IBR, and it's helping them hopefully manage their loans, but that means their loans are negatively amortizing, and they're never going to pay it off. They're not even covered.
1 minute.
And they can't. And that's why the loans keep growing in size. And I will say, though, yes, it is a problem for everyone, but it's worse for Black borrowers because it's taking us longer to pay it off. Whereas, 20 years into repayment, white borrowers, on average, have paid off 95% of their principal balance. On the flip side, Black borrowers still have 95% of their principal balance. We can't pay it off.
Say that
30.
one more time. I got 20 seconds. Say that one more time.
Black borrowers cannot pay it off. 20 years into repayment, they have 95% of their original balance.
And white students?
15.
And white students have paid off 95% of it.
That's,
this is a
10.
Do not bury the lead. Stay right here. I'm going to keep you on Facebook Live for a couple minutes. But coming up, what's happening down in Texas and all around the country. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, Attorney Harrington, you got to come back.
Anytime you want me. I love talking with y'all.
Oh, no. I mean,
I'm an AKA, so you know.
Okay.
So
okay, but I'm loving you. It's all love, girl. Okay, it's all love.
I know.
It's all love.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm giving you the ooh whoop ski. Okay, how about that?
I will come back anytime.
Oh, and 6 of my great aunts were AKAs, by the way. My father's a Q.
I love it.
What can I do? My father's a Q.
Okay.
He's a Q. So, I mean, and plus, the Deltas, that's my girls and my girl Stephanie's up here with me this morning, but she is raising Cain because she is. I saw, in fact, I was so happy to see her on one of the HGTV shows one night, guiding a Black family into home ownership. And she and her husband, they have a wonderful business. And I'm gonna, Stephanie, call me because I want to get you on. Because we have to, we need to have a discussion, Attorney Harrington, with her and others about how we can still kind of live in between the margins, even when you carry this debt, how you can still navigate it. because
Yep.
we're going to.
Because she's a real estate agent, so she sees it from both sides, right?
Oh, yeah.
She sees it as a parent who has loans, but as people trying to qualify it,
That's
we
right.
would love to come talk about student loans and home ownership.
We're going to do it in the next few days, honestly, because
Okay.
that's a real issue and also the push that we're going to have to push the president on this because we did not know. I mean, now you understand where Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, why they came out immediately and said, no, 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 you can't do this. Now we
Right. This is
voted
why
for
we
you.
need your help.
Oh yeah. No, no, no. We
So
got
we
to
need
do
your
that.
help. I need you to push this.
Oh
I
yeah.
need you to push this with your listeners because, and just, just the way he framed it, right? This is a rich kid problem. People at home, we're like, no, that's not that's not what's happening. That's not what student debt looks like.
No. And you know what?
That's
Let me
not
tell you
it.
something. If you relieve some rich kids debt, fine. I don't you do that anyway. You know what? Because let me tell you, when you think of, oh look, I mean, Denzel and Pauletta Washington are very wealthy people, but their son earned a scholarship, earned a full scholarship to Morehouse. Denzel Washington went to the president of Morehouse and said, I want to thank you for giving my son this scholarship, but we can afford this. So let me just pay you. He said, no, 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 no. This wasn't, he said, I admire your work. I love you, Mr. Washington, but this scholarship wasn't for you. This is a merit-based scholarship. Your son earned this. And he needs to know that he earned it. So you kind of get out of this. I mean, one of the proudest days of my life. I got to tell you, my mother walked up, because she knew that my tuition was paid and my books, and she was standing in line with some other friends who were paying, coming to pay the tuition because a group of us went to college together. And my mother came to my room and she said, "You don't know, I had one of the proudest moments I think I'll ever have as a parent." I said, "What happened?" She said, "I went to pay your bill because I knew you had done what I asked you to do. You got your tuition paid. You got your books paid. And your father and I were prepared to do the rest." She said, "But they told me, oh no, Mrs. Jackson, everything is paid. And in fact, she's got a stipend." And my mother said, I said, "Well, Mom," she said, every night I walked past your room and saw that light on." She said, "I don't have, and my parents didn't have Denzel money at all. I mean, because I needed my scholarship. That having been said, so I don't have a problem with that. Because every rich kid is not trying to live off the fat of the land, and every poor kid is not working hard. So just stop it.
Right.
But we need equal access to equal high quality education for everybody. Now, what you do with it is on you. Stop it. Because if you can give $20+ trillion to these banks who continue to fail up, we're still bailing them out. You can bail out. Americans can't be too small to save and banks too big to fail. I'm sorry. I'm tired of that. We need to be tired of that. That's crazy.
Yep.
So
it's a public good, just like you said.
Come on. And so you'll be hearing from me today. Because this is
let me know.
Oh no. Because we've got to figure out a way to make it in the margins. Because this is the problem. But I think do we have Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis with us?
Yes, I am here. Good to be with you.
You see,
and good to be warm today.
Oh my gosh! Now this is
in Houston.
Now look. Now you remember when you were bragging the other week about your 65 degrees that you were about to go biking in? Remember that?
Yeah, I do. I knew you would call me. When my power went out, I was wondering when will the phone go out, because I knew I'd hear from you. But you were at least kind enough to wait until I was living in my office before you reached out to me.
No, wait a minute. Now I can't believe you haven't heard from my brother Jonathan. I have attorney Ashley Harrington on with me. She is the senior counsel at the Center for Responsible Lending. You've got to have her on because she is pushing, and she needs your help in pushing to. I didn't know that the president, with the stroke of a pen, could discharge $50,000 of debt for our kids, and I did not realize white kids are able to get rid of 95% of their debt in 20 years, and black folks still have 95% of their debt 20 years later.
I was listening to some of that, and I was going to tell you, I was when my power.
1 minute.
yesterday afternoon after 2 days in Houston. I was listening to NPR, this new book by Heather McGhee. Have you heard about it?
No.
The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. Pull it.
Okay.
She is, I think, the chair of the board of Color of Change, The Sum of Us. Just Google that.
Okay, I'll do that.
It is a great book, and it talks about how, most of these government programs, most whites in America,
30.
the majority of American people wanted more government intervention to improve their lives and our lives until we were included. Basically making the case once we could benefit from the GI Bill and from Jenny Mae and Fannie Mae,
15.
middle classes created under FDR. Everybody was for it until the civil rights movement came along, and then they
10.
to us. And it's just interesting.
Well, no, stand by. Hold
Five.
on.
Like the audio version.
You know, we're coming up, but stay right there. Hold on. You know.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Santita Jackson Show. It is Thursday, February 18th, 2021. Happy birthday, Joyce Anderson. How you doing, sweetie? Everybody's giving her much birthday love on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and on the Santita Jackson page on Facebook, and on the Reverend Jesse Jackson Senior page, because that is where we're streaming live, and we're streaming on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. I have my own channel, everybody, so please like and subscribe, and we're also over on Twitter at the Santita J Show, and at Santita J. So everybody, please get involved. We want to continue to grow the show. Call or text me here, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Call or text me at 773-763-WCPT. You can also reach me up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, if you call that same number, 773-763. 9278 AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. You all are my family up there too, and it's great to be with you today. We have a hot conversation. We've been talking about COVID-19. We've been talking about the student loan debt. We're going to be talking about student loan debt some more with Dr. Max Wolf at the bottom of the hour, but we got to talk about what's happening in Texas and Oklahoma and Oregon and Arkansas and all over the country. This power grid failure in Texas, though, really the mother hub for the energy system in our country, is particularly, no pun intended, chilling. It's really unsettling, and we've got to find out what's happening there. And of course, we've got Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, a favorite of ours on this show, who lost power in his home too. And he's got a wife and a family. So we're going to find out what's going on with him. Everybody, today we have a high today in Chicago of 18 degrees. Snow showers, though. It's snowing right now. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 17 degrees, cloudy. The Dow closed up yesterday by 90 points. The Standard & Poor's 500 closed down by 1.26 points. The NASDAQ closed down 82 points. Everybody, millions are without power, and we're going to talk about that with Harris County Commissioner down in Texas. Going to talk with him about that. What's going on? I mean, because we see people being poisoned by carbon monoxide. But in the meantime, let's find out about the pandemic. As we find out that the pandemic has cut the U.S. life expectancy by a full year during the first half of 2020, a staggering decline, according to this Washington Post report, that reflects the toll of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as a rise in deaths from drug overdoses, heart attacks, and diseases that accompanied the outbreak, according to statistics released by the National Center for Health Statistics. That's part of the CDC. Black and Latino Americans were harder hit than whites, reflecting the racial disparities of the pandemic, according to this new analysis. But COVID-19 cases, according to the World Health Organization, were down 16% last week. Why is that? Maybe it's behavior. That is what's happening, and that's what they're saying in this Atlantic article. Maybe Americans are finally getting the hang of the masks and washing their hands and all of that. Maybe it is. Some people are saying that it's really too early to tell about the vaccine, but maybe it was seasonality. Maybe the coronavirus was destined to decline at this time of the year. We don't know, but we do know that is good news. In the meantime, military coronavirus vaccine. 1/3 of America's troops have declined the vaccine, and that is very concerning to the military, but they are declining to take the vaccine. And Naomi Osaka outplayed her idol yesterday to advance to the Australian Open final. We're still waiting for Serena to get that 24th Grand Slam title. But you know what? She still is the GOAT, everybody. Let me bring on. We were talking with, of course, from the the Center for Responsible Lending. We were talking with this hot conversation about student loan debt. But you know what? Now we've got this crisis that really is very unsettling to see what's happening in Texas, because you know what, it could happen here. We in Chicago, in the state of Illinois, had a lieutenant governor who became governor who campaigned in large measure about the infrastructure. He said, look, we have these power lines that are above ground. That is very old technology. And this was more than 10 years ago. He said, we are one storm away from disaster. What happened in Texas? They did not expect to get this 60, 70, 80-degree swing in temperatures. They're like 50, 60 degrees below normal. And now the biggest oil refineries, they're shut down. Now their pipes are bursting in their homes. You've got people who are using non-traditional means. Well, you know what? Let me just go to Harris County um, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, because you lost power too. What happened down
Hey,
there?
Santita. Texas has this attitude of independence, of wanting to do everything its way, which is why we don't take the Obamacare, the affordable health care money as an example. It's just ridiculous. So we have our own power grid. There are three grids in the country. There's one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, dividing the country, and then there's one in Texas. And this goes back to FDR. When the Federal Power Act was passed, it gave the federal government the power to regulate interstate power grids. Well, so in Texas, probably in about the 60s or so, after other grid failures, they decided, well, we just set up our own separate one and we'll keep it within the state, so we're not regulated. It is interesting. El Paso and certain parts of the state out west and up in the northeastern part of the state are not on this separate grid. El Paso, I think, lost power. I talked to Beto, one of your other favorites. I think they had about 50 houses to lose power. In Texas, in Harris County, where we got about 5 million people, it was almost 2 million people. About 1.5 million of these households lost power, and that's scary. The last time I looked at it before I finally took a pill so I could go to bed, wondering if my power would go off again last night, 12 people had died. The power plants were not prepared for this kind of freezing weather. So it's 30 degrees in Houston now. It was 18 degrees with the chill factor. It was more something akin to about 2 or 3 degrees, felt like 2 or 3 degrees a couple of days ago. You know, you got to remember when we talk about global warming, it's not just hotter weather. It's these drastic changes. It's Harvey, Katrina, rain events. It's snow events. It is heat events. And you got to be prepared both ways. So only about 40% of the households in Houston had power. It was really pretty scary. My wife and daughter went and stayed at her sister's house. Her sister's in Chicago for a couple of days, so they went out by the Galleria, and that was power. My sisters left my father's home out in Sunnyside area I grew up in, assuming I'd have power over here in my neighborhood by the medical center. So she came to my house Monday night about 4. Well, about 5 o'clock, I said, the power just went out. We can stay here tonight, or we can do something else. We decided to stay here on Monday night and then move to the office Tuesday night.
Are
I
you
was prepared to stay
serious?
there again last night. I slept on one sofa. She slept on the other sofa. We're lucky. Our pipes have not burst so far, but all night I was waiting to get my wife waking me up and say the power went out. But look, here's the byproduct of deregulation. We deregulated it, assuming the market would make these decisions, and as a result of that, the prices are really going to be outrageous. I mean, there's really no incentive for people making money to prepare for these fairly infrequent, which are becoming more frequent weather events. About once a decade, this has happened in Texas. And you just can't expect the private sector on their own to go out and prepare for this. Here's the price of wholesale electricity. It's near $9,000 per megawatt hour. That's a maximum. And that proves that market incentives are just not enough. That's 400 times the average wholesale price, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. And that's just simply not enough to ensure that people get basic resources. It is not enough to adapt to the climate changing. And we're paying a price for it. And here's what's going on. You saw our former governor, Rick Perry, saying Texans would prefer to have the inconvenience than to have the federal government get in our business. That's crazy. What planet is he on? Now, I'm not saying it's always such a bad thing if Illinois wanted its own grid, but somebody has to ask the question, what are the federal standards? And on the state level, are you equipped to regulate and to require somebody meet or exceed those standards of the federal government or any other entity? Because now with climate change, we never know. You never know if Illinois is going to get the rain event we had with Harvey in Houston. We never know if Houston or Texas is going to get the kind of snow you get. Our houses are not equipped for it. So why is it that my pipes may burst? It's because they're not weatherized for cold weather. It's sort of like if you get about 30 days of 100-degree weather, you're going to have massive deaths in Cook County, in Chicago. Your houses are not equipped for that, as my houses are not equipped for this kind of severe cold weather. But with climate change, these severe changes, they come, and we have to be prepared. And that means what? We have to spend money to be resilient. We got to invest in resiliency. And that means you got to pay for it up front, or you pay for it later when you're covering for emergencies, which costs a hell of a lot more.
Are we prepared to have this conversation? I mean, because as late as last year, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave America a D plus for infrastructure. They said you need more than $4.5 trillion by 2025 in order to get us just to get our heads just above water. And energy got a D plus. You know, because they went through aviation, bridges, dams, drinking water, all of that. Are we ready to have that conversation?
Well, put it this way. Either we got to be ready to have the conversation, or we got to be willing to pay the price. And that means oftentimes in cases like what happened in Houston, at least 12 people are dead that we know about. That was when I went to bed last night. There will be others. And it's a real simple proposition. Most problems that come across my desk are not problems that can be solved without money. Now, you don't want to just waste money. But the harsh reality is we got to pay for it. You want better bridges in Chicago? You want better roads? You want better utility lines? You want them underground? You want them above the ground? You want them protected? You know, you want telephone poles that won't snap when there's a cold front? We have to pay for it. And that means that we have to have the money come from some way. You can move the chairs around on the Titanic, and we can fight about, let's take it from somebody else, or we have to invest in our nation. And that's, look, I'm a Democrat, and it's always a tough thing to talk about where does the money come from. But, you know, sometimes I joke and say any idiot can pass and get elected on a tax cut. That's the easy thing to do. Who does not want more money in their pocket? Everybody wants more money in their pocket. But nobody wants to freeze to death. Nobody wants to be so hot that people die from heat exhaustion. We got to invest in the infrastructure nationally and on the local level. We got to invest in our schools. You know, we got to invest in pre-K as an example, which you got to pay for it.
Well, I mean, but let's roll this back. What is it like when your power goes out? What are some of the things that happen when that happens?
Well,
not just your power,
but
everybody around you.
Yeah. Well, obviously, most of us don't. In the winter in Houston, in the summer, we have our packs prepared, waiting for a hurricane. You know, you got your little goodie pack with food and those things. You don't even think about it in the winter. I mean, even if we knew that some bad weather was coming in, but it's, you know, you wouldn't think it would be this bad. You just hope not this time. First thing is, if you have a two-story house, how do you get downstairs when the power's out if you don't have a flashlight? You know, how do you make sure you get everybody in the house if it goes off during the night? which is when mine went off. How do you, about 7 o'clock when mine went off, how do you make sure if the sun is down, you got everybody? Luckily, some of the lights were still on, the street pole lights, which might be gas lighted. So I could lift the shades up, and then I could get everyone together, and we could make a plan on where we go. Then if the street lights are out, you got to make sure you don't just go driving down the street and hit somebody. And then you want to make sure you secure your home. We were told normally as a freeze, you have the faucets just drip a little bit. Well, we didn't want to do that because if that led to pipes bursting, then you got a host of other issues. But no, it's just frightening. It's just like a horror movie. You have no earthly idea what to do. Then where do you go? I mean, who do you call? When you have 40% of the houses in Houston with their power out, well, who are you going to call? And then in my case, I could look right across the street, and they were on a different circuit, I guess. So some of my neighbors had power. And then people connect generators and don't know how to work them. I don't have one. I thought about it because of hurricanes. I'm going to spend that money now. I'm fortunate we can afford it. So we will pay to get that generator. But most of my constituents cannot do it. So when hurricane season comes in a couple of months, that's when we'll have outages again. If it's a rough year for hurricanes, I will go ahead and pay, to get the generators, but most people cannot. And then in my case, being a public official, I'm trying to figure out, are the warming centers that we set up, are the generators working there? If the power goes out, are my generators working? Because we haven't needed them since last summer during hurricane season. And as state would have it, one of the generators did go out at a power center we opened up. And then I'm trying to figure out, how do I get employees to go in and help when their power is out? It's like a horror movie. It's what it was like.
In a pandemic, when we're supposed to be physically distant from each other. I mean, because my instinct when I'm cold is to get huddled up. Body heat.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Let me. I have Eddie Royal, who's calling from Dallas, Texas. Eddie, what's on your mind?
Good morning, and thank you for accepting my call.
Of course.
Basically, with the last caller that's just on, I can actually look out my window, and part of the due to the electricity issue, we're actually on my street. We're actually on two separate grids, and half the neighbors was actually off for at least a half of evening. So I know that they didn't have any electricity. So I basically, if someone wanted to come over, I had both heat and electric. Now my water was actually off because we didn't have enough pressure to even to run part of the water in the house. So I mean, this affected everyone from Southern Dallas to North Dallas, which is one of our suburbs of Plano. So some of the people didn't even have gas because that's how they build a lot of these new homes, So, I mean, everyone was affected, and they were saying that they was covering up with 2 or 3 extra layer of clothes just to be able to do everything. I actually went to fill my car up because I had a half a tank of fuel. Well, that didn't work because even the people at the pumps didn't have any electricity. No power. So you had to do that.
And they did have power. How could you pay for it? And even if the pump worked, if it didn't work on this side, how could you pay for it? How could you get cash out of ATM when the power was out?
Well, correct. I mean, so at that point, people were saying, well, if part of it worked, if you had cash, then we would accept that. Well, most people today, I was lucky I still had cash.
Yeah,
But,
and then they look at you like you're a drug dealer, Eddie. I mean, people almost want you to give a fingerprint when you pay in cash. But
correct, and that brings us back to don't want to say George Floyd, but I mean that brings everybody back to why in the world would you have cash? So I mean that's one topic. To talk about the electricity. When I was in the military, I started off as being what's called a 31 kilo. That's communication. Well, our grid system is still built on the old highway system of the 1950s. So when you're thinking about the grids and the poles that are up, that's all 1950s technology. So when you're hearing like Greg Abbott and all of the Perry talk about coal and all of that, everything's being transitioned from airlines to cars to everything else. It's going to take basically our lifetime and part of our kids to not necessarily 100% off of that, but we will start doing like 50-50 of going from clean coal to scrubbers to everything else to being able to do that. So like you're hearing about Cadillac to Ford is only producing one car to everything else becoming electric. That's going to be like hybrid, and they're throwing everything, including the kitchen sink. But you're going to have to look at one thing. These old homes, like I'm currently in now, in 1950s, these homes are not going to be able to survive any of that, because anytime you have that, all these smart meters and your kitchen appliances, it come to like we're having the crisis here in Texas. Anytime you have that, the grid itself is going to pull all of the electricity out of your car and everything else back to the grid to be able to supplement everything. So Texas is not going to be able to have itself isolated. It's going to have to go back to the federal grid system.
Well, you know, Commissioner, I've got 2 minutes. They belong to you.
Well, I should say that federal grid needs to be improved as well. And although it was not the wisest decision for Texas, just decided to do it on its own and not regulate it, not put in requirements like the feds had. The reason Texas pulled out was because of weather events where we were having rolling blackouts across the nation over a long period of time. You all have had it from time to time in your part of the world, Santita. But so the real challenge is we have got to invest in our infrastructure, and we got to pay for it. We got to make some people bad. But we got to have a candid conversation and say we cannot live like this. Santita, I was thinking of a trip I had with your dad. We were in a African country. I won't name which one. We're in the president's office. Reb Jackson, I'm part of his entourage. Jonathan was there. I think your mom was there. And they all go past all these AK-47s. You know where we were. Can't remember if you were
Yes,
there.
I do.
Then all of a sudden, they have a rolling blackout, and you just drinking your tea. And I'm sitting there thinking, while the power's out, you don't want to be rude and say,
1 minute.
but I'm thinking, what if somebody tripped and need to go to the restroom and AK-47 go off in the dark? You're sitting in the presidential palace, and that's what I felt like when my power went out. I was just laying there in my bed under the cover thinking, this is like being in a developing country, and here we are in the energy capital of the world. That's Texas. Houston considered the energy city capital of the world, and this could happen. A lack of willing to have a candid conversation and tell people
30.
you pay for most things you get in life. And if you don't pay, what you get is something that you'll have to complain about. That's the harsh reality of it.
Give Leisha and my family, my Texas family, my love. Because you know, I've been all jokes aside.
I won't be bragging. I wouldn't.
10. 5.
I love this man, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Harris County Commissioner. Coming up, Dr. Max Wolf. Stay warm, Commissioner. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Oh,
all right, sister.
Look, you know I
I'm
love
out
you.
of here. I can get dressed now. Thank you. I love you.
Oh,
all
but
right.
Please let us know what's going on, because I really, all jokes aside, I was really worried about you. I really was.
Oh,
so part of that was a wellness
It was scary.
check.
All right, thank you. Love you. Have a good day.
Love you. I'll speak with you.
All right, thank you.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
my goodness. Oh, well, everybody, I hope you all got something out of that, because you know what? This could happen to us in Chicago. It could happen anywhere. The American Society of Civil Engineers, they have given us a D+, okay? And a D+ for energy. We have something to do here. You know, we have something that we need to do. Everybody like and share. Please go to my new Santita Jackson panel, the Santita Jackson Show, over on YouTube. So please like and subscribe. We're streaming over there. So Bab, lead everybody over there. And happy birthday, Joyce Anderson, one more time. I hope that you've had a good time. Hope you got some love from everybody. Do we have Dr. Wolf on?
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Wolf. How are you?
Okay.
You know what?
We'll have electricity and heat, I think, for now.
Look, you better don't look. That's not a given, as we can see.
No. I'm not trying to be braggadocious, but I feel like I'm like in part of the upper crust here in this functioning nation of ours.
You are.
I probably only have a couple hours because we do have another blizzard. It's already started, so I don't,
Oh, in New
trying
York?
to enjoy it temporarily. Oh, yeah, it's already snowing here.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, but I also wanted, you know what? We had a lot of people had a lot of questions about. We had a lot of people have questions about the grid, but student loan debt also. I mean, we've touched upon a lot of topics, because we had Attorney Ashley Harrington on with us, the Center for Responsible Lending. And she said, what was so galling to people in that particular space was that the president could discharge $50,000 of debt for people with an executive order. She said, because this is federal debt. And I want you to go into that. Because,
some of the debt's private, right? So the federal government has very limited oversight or abilities there. And some of the debt is state debt, governmental debt. And there's more leeway for executive action.
Well, he needs to do something. Because I tell you what, people are not getting married. People's marriages are breaking up. People are living multi-generationally. This is, wherever you want to go is fine. But I certainly would like for you to address that. Because people... I was so glad to see Senators Warren and Sanders jump out and say, and Schumer say, look, we can't go on this way.
1 minute.
We can't. But, I'm always glad to have you on with me, Dr. Max. So, Dr. Reeves, why don't you call back? Because I knew you wanted to ask a question about student loan. And Renee, you tearing it up today. What? Renee?
I'm here. I think I lost you for 1 second there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no. Always let me know if something is
30.
MS. Okay. We're inside of
30. No,
30.
I was talking, and you were fortunate enough not to hear me because I think the universe muted me for a moment.
Max, stop it. Please.
15.
The universe.
Even if you hung up on me, I'd probably be talking.
10.
Okay.
I would never hang up
5.
on you.
It's effective on mute, I think.
No,
it could be, a technical glitch or something.
No.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Thursday, February 18th, 2021. It's Thursday, bottom of the hour. You know what time it is. It's Dr. Max Wolf time. He said, I can go anywhere you want to go today. We can talk about student loan debt. We can talk about the infrastructure, because that is what we're looking at down in Texas. And we just want to send our prayers to all the people, not just in Texas. This is Oklahoma, 100,000 plus people in Oregon. Their grid is, they've had problems too. This is a national crisis in which we find ourselves, everybody. But so is student loan debt. And so many of you wanted to talk about that. Freddie Mac, as you say, Michelle, is federal. We're going to talk to Dr. Wolf about it, and we want you all to continue to call in, because you all were calling in about that, and you were calling in about this too. So, Eddie from Dallas, Texas, praying for you and your family. Thank you for calling in. Dr. Wolf, student loan debt, help me with this. What is it? How do we get out of it?
Yeah, so I think sometimes with student loan debt, it's good to set the picture here. So college has become very unaffordable for the vast preponderance of American young people for really in pretty consistent stages over the last 30 or 40 years. So it's gone from being something, which it still kind of is for many, as a gateway to the middle class, or a way not to fall out of the middle class, or a way to get into the middle class, whatever you however you want to frame it. And it is required to get most of it, the most shot you'd have at most good jobs, particularly out of a few areas which are very competitive because they don't require the college degree to have some chance to have a retirement and benefits and paid vacation days and such like live with enough means to purchase a home, things like that. But so it's become unaffordable, which makes the dream itself unaffordable. The alternative, i.e., not being able to get into the middle class, has become more and more kind of savagely difficult to live on. The wages, the conditions, the lack of benefits, the insecurities, right? The risks people have to take to make a living. So getting into the middle class has become an urgent priority for a chance at a reasonable life, and it's become more and more expensive. We don't subsidize it. And so we have this weird disconnect here where you have to get this done, but you probably don't have the means to get it done, particularly if you're not already in at least a middle class household, right? At least, I mean, just by income level, at least a middle class income level. And even that probably wouldn't give you much guarantee. So we've done a disjointed, uncoordinated attempt at a private solution to a social problem, which is actually what links the power outage, in my mind, to the student loan issue, right? Attempt sort of for-profit private solutions to public sector problems tend to be expensive, and they tend not to work for the bottom 60 to 80% of Americans, right? We can debate whether they work for anyone, but they definitely don't tend to have a great track record for the bottom, say, 3 or 4 out of 5 people, which, again, last time I checked, there's a big number of folks. So we have that sort of issue there. So people go to extremes, literally to extremes, and extreme debt, sometimes into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, in order to get educated, to do what they want to do what their calling tells them to do what they need to do, or to stay in or get into the middle class. And then they spend years and years and years paying for it. And, just like everywhere else, I guess, as an economist, it's another example of the most expensive thing in America to be is poor. Because you'll always pay more for less, right? And the problem with making the most expensive thing in your country being poor is that the poor will get poorer, and it doesn't do much to increase meritocracy, where the best can rise, or a chance at social upward mobility, which I think is the social glue that we sometimes feel ourselves lacking these days. A sense that if I do play by this society's rules, I will get this society's rewards.
Well, see, because that's the rub. I mean, we just had, as I shared with you, Attorney Ashley Harrington, brilliant attorney from the Center for Responsible Lending, and 20 years after students accrue this debt, 95% of white students, former students, are able to discharge the debt. They're able to work it off. 95% of black people still have it. I mean, this is a real this student loan debt stands in between black people in particular, really everybody who gets it, but black people especially. It stands in between us and getting out from under. And sadly, it can create more of a problem than it purports to uh, to prevent. How
Yeah,
do
look, I
we?
do think there's some benefits to being educated. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
I also think, look, socially, we need educated citizenry too, right? So there's also a social good that people are privately paying for. So a more educated citizenry means smarter voters, better voters, and people who are able to do something, which unfortunately is part of the reason for the student debt, which is this labor market is changing fast. And where the jobs are from one industry to another is changing pretty quickly. And so if you don't have a certain amount of education, where education is really useful often for teaching you how to teach yourself, it becomes very, very hard to stay employed consistently in the economy, right? Because the skills you have can come in and out of demand. And if you can't pivot, you can't find another place to be compensated for your efforts, it can be very hard not to sink into poverty, right? And in some cases, quite extreme poverty. But if it costs more to go to school, then you don't buy a house. And if you don't buy a house, then you're a renter, right? And you can see this ramifies, right? I mean, the other sort of famous case here is that if you can't really afford to be in school until you have to work full time, you don't get a lot of the benefit of being in school, which is often networking, because the other reason schools are important to people is they often give people a network of professional associates, which I think we all know is how you get jobs.
Hold on one moment. I didn't realize that Attorney Harrington is still with us. That is wonderful. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And she is from I'm glad she was with us early this morning, Dr. Wolf. But let me bring her back on because she wanted to clarify something about student loans. And of course, she is a senior policy analyst at, senior policy counsel, Attorney Ashley Harrington from the Center for Responsible Lending. Please. Attorney Harrington?
Hi.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
no, I agree with so much of the discussion and glad to still be here. I just wanted to note that just to flag, absolutely he can do this. 90% of the outstanding 1.7 trillion, 1.6 trillion of the outstanding debt is federally owned or guaranteed debt. So when we say that the federal government and President Biden can do something about the student loan problem, we mean it. This is literally a federal problem. It was made by federal policy choices not to increase the Pell Grant, choices to switch to a debt finance model, choices not to fix income-based repayment and not to include all loans in it, choices not to make PSLF applicable to all loans. Like there's so many choices that were made that are keeping families struggling. And so the federal government can take steps to do something about this. And Joe Biden himself can do something about it.
Well, and Joe Biden should do something about it. I mean, what is the rub? Because this is one of the top economists in the world. Help me, and whose politics are absolutely progressive.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here, Max? I mean, because Max, this is
So, I mean,
impacting.
honestly, I think this is more
Yeah.
political than economic, right? So
Okay.
the historic justification for this, or the sort of stridency here, is that repayment of past student loans does form part of the basis of the capital pool that's lent out to future student loans, i.e., right? So that folks who borrowed in the past and pay it back are paying back into a pool, some of which is paid out to future loan recipients, right? The size of the grants, the Stafford, the Pell, the other federal system loans has not risen with tuition, which I think is part of the point that your other esteemed guest is making, which is clearly true, which kind of leaves the funding gap larger. But there's some other odd things that have occurred, right? So as interest rates have been dropped and kept really low for a long time now, really kind of starting in 2002, but then becoming kind of extreme in 2008, we haven't passed along those lower interest rates very effectively to our student borrowers. Right. So that's a big issue. The other thing is, look, asking young people to start their life saddled and oppressed by debt is a terrible idea. That's a terrible model. And so if you want people to be able to afford something and you want to make a commitment to it, giving them a way to borrow money is a lot less useful than giving them a way to afford the service or the good. Right. But we didn't do that. We gave them access to money. And that made a lot more sense, again, 30 or 40 years ago, when some of this stuff sort of started, where the cost of going to college was pretty affordable. I mean, I think in the 70s, even into the early mid 80s, 90s, the cost of the average state university was actually payable out of an average job, right? Not without some hardship and not without some delay, but it was pretty payable. And that just hasn't kept up, right? So if your wages stagnate and the cost of something kind of blows out, running so much faster than inflation or wage growth, then you have the scenarios that we now see in things like health insurance, which has a similar pattern, or student loans. And the reason you might care about that is being healthy and having a chance to be gainfully employed in the future and have some upward mobility are not minor in their social impact if you don't provide them. But then we've gotten into this weird world where we're still in 1988 when we talk about anything that's sort of for the social good and we have to pinch pennies. But if we are talking about other things that have no greater social import, you know, bailing out large corporations, et cetera, then we're in a place where money doesn't matter. So I think it's kind of become more of a political issue than an economic issue, right? So if we're a country that ran a $3 trillion budget deficit last year, our budget deficit last year was twice the total outstanding student loan balance. So we're not afraid of deficit spending, but we may or may not have the political will to spend it on one thing versus another. And those really are values choices, more residing in the political science and the psychology field, to be honest, than my field, which is more technical usually in its outlook.
Well, you know, Daryl Prunty said Biden needs to step up his game and forgive the student loan debt for many struggling Americans. African Americans are suffering the most from having massive student loan debt. We saved the Biden campaign from faltering, and now he owes his community big time. You know, it is political. But let me ask you this. Attorney Harrington spoke of this student loan industrial complex. Who populates this student loan industrial complex? Who benefits economically from this student loan industrial complex? Attorney,
Are you
excuse me,
asking me?
Dr. Wolf. Oh, yeah, Dr. Wolf. Yes, please. Who is in it?
Yeah.
Sorry, so I mean,
Ask the
I'm not 100% familiar with the term, so like I could easily mishandle the answer on that basis. But my understanding is, look, anytime you have a $1.6 trillion outstanding balance, right, even if the interest rates are pretty low, you're still talking about a situation of billions and billions of dollars a month in principal repayment and interest, right? So that means you have a large economy around it, around providing it. I don't think you'd necessarily need or want to see all of that go away. I think you'd want to change it, right? And I think there's some interesting models that people have suggested that have been tried in other places. I know for some reason we like to fail as opposed to try someone else's ideas sometimes in the US, but I'm open for at least trying out this idea of instead of failing ourselves, we could move forward together, whatever possible. So one thing you could do is you could have underrepresented groups and going into underserved fields where there's labor shortages get an increased subsidy, right? So you can say, hey, let's put a lot of subsidy dollar around righting imbalances, historic, social, and also future into the job market, which I think makes sense, right? And it's another kind of crisis sitting here too, which was mentioned extensively this morning, and I apologize for not knowing, which you guys no doubt artfully covered then, but there's also this sort of crisis of for-profit education in the U.S., where there are a lot of schools that have gotten really good at getting students loan money, which they often can't repay, to get degrees of dubious merit and questionable job market fit. So training a lot of people in the rural Midwest to become Hollywood hair and makeup artists, while every single Hollywood hair and makeup artist is presently out of work, and their probability of getting those jobs in a rural area thousands of miles away from a film and television location, we could have a conversation about that. But having nurses and teachers, we probably shouldn't be having too much delay on, right? So we could also, you can sort of intervene and make a social plan here to do a bunch of things. And I think you could make it popular to people who politically don't always like this, because retraining and training Americans might also reduce some of the tension around importing foreign skilled labor that we see, around our immigration debates right now.
It's a political issue. I think that you've made that. I think you've made that clear, and I think that we can all agree on that. What should be done? I'm saying that in this context. In this pandemic has really laid bare inequality. It's laid bare really the precariousness of our lives. I mean, most of us precariously employed, precariously well, just precarious, precarious, precarious. Now our backs are against the wall, Max. People are dying of drug overdoses. People, if you can
I
get
think
the
I have to
vaccine.
correct you there. I'm pretty sure Jared Kushner fixed that.
Oh, you know what? See, let me tell you, girl, you gotta, you gotta be ready for him. I'm not. What are we supposed to do here, Max? Help me.
No, I just wanted to make sure that there was no fake news being done here.
You know what, girl? You know what? Let me tell you, you gotta watch him. But it's true. He did fix it. Oh yeah.
He fixed everything.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He did
Yeah.
fix it.
I mean, he modernized the government, so I'm not really sure what Ashley's doing. She's probably upset she's out of a job.
He fixed the whole criminal justice system. Didn't you think?
Yes. That was probably like the first few days.
Right.
I'm still studying the method. The method seems very interesting to me. We were not taught that where I went to grad school. It's obviously a bad choice on my part.
You know what? Do not encourage this man. I'm trying to get through the show. Well, I'd forgotten all about them. And, now he's bringing it back up. Oh my gosh. What's happening? What's happening to me?
We were all trying to move on.
It's not your fault. You guys are sick of winning because we won so much under the Trump years that you probably got sick of winning. So sick, in fact, that 500,000 of our fellow citizens shed their earthly container because they could not stand another win.
Oh my my gosh. Max, what are we going to do? People can't.
Pickofwing.com. Look, obviously there's some pretty serious problems, and one of them, all jokes aside, is a lot of misinformation, like what I just shared with you. But yeah, I do think these issues are pretty serious because they're about what society you're building, right? And it's sort of sad if we have all these conversations about, the future and caring for children, and they don't include providing for them, right? The other thing, I think America has an idea of a student body. I teach at a university, right? So perhaps I have a slightly different view, but I think the American idea of student loans and student bodies is kind of middle-class kids going to party and maybe learn a few things for a few years in state U, a la some kind of version of Animal House or something, right? And I think the truth is that there's a lot of struggling immigrants, single parents, and people for whom perhaps a whole extended family is relying on their successful ability to get through an expensive program with some debt probably and some help from the relatives, to try to get themselves, by way of helping everyone else, get up out of a very difficult situation, right? And get their piece of the American dream. And when you close that door on the dream, you get a nightmare, right? And there's a million forms of that, but that is a lot of the angst, I think, driving what you saw on January 6th, among other things, right? It's a lot of people who feel like, hey, we're supposed to get ours. Where is it? We're not going to get it. And I totally understand that, right? That makes sense. That's smart. That's reasonable. The form of expression, assaulting police officers and rampaging to the Capitol is clearly not the most productive way to let people know that you're unhappy, right? And there was a lot of other motivations probably driving folks there too, which, aren't so good, like the effort as a group to bring fur back into style, I thought was unfortunate, and some other things. But yeah, look, I think separate and apart from all that, when people are telling you every way they can, from the opioid issues to the refusal to wear a mask to the other stuff here, that they're in trouble. And part of the way you help get people out of trouble is you give them hope. And, a way to work hard and go through school and get some new skills and get another job is important for social cohesion, because people have to think there's a benefit to playing by the rules, or they'll start getting pretty interested in going around them.
Absolutely. Let me go to Dr. Reeves. Dr. Marley Reeves has called in. Dr. Reeves and Attorney Harrington, you're still with us, yes?
Yes. Good morning, Santita.
We're just having a grand old party today, but Dr. Wolf has been with me since I think 2006 or 2007. That's when we met virtually, and he's just got a piece of my heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
A whole lot of it, and I just love him. And pardon me, Attorney Harrington and Dr. Reeves, his other profession that he should have gone into was comedy. So just.
I see that. I was actually listening to him, and I listened to the attorney earlier. Both are very much spot on. I can tell you, for me, I have multiple degrees, and I've been paying off a debt of over $190,000 for a number of years. It was very interesting because when I became an educator, they said, we actually forgive this after serving in, high risk neighborhoods. And so I did that service. And at the end of that service, they said, no, the funding is not there. And I said, funding? What do you mean the funding is not there? I gave I worked in a school that I had students in my classroom that were from every which gang sitting in front of me, and I did it, loved working with the kids, not necessarily focused on the fact that, okay, I'm going to get my student loans forgiven, but, that was also part of it. The interesting thing is that debt over time, compounding interest, no matter how much I paid over the years, it seems like that has not gone down. And I've written checks, for substantial amounts that I thought would have literally cut that principal in at least half. And never went down. But every single time they've offered a loan forgiveness incentive at some point, there's always a caveat why you cannot get it, why it does not apply to you. So when the current president said, absolutely not, I had to remember what my grandmother said to me. A promise is a comfort to a fool, right? I thought about the fact that he never promised to forgive our student loan debt. He never promised that education in America would be free for all students all individuals who want it, right? And those are the things I looked at. So, while I am very annoyed that he would have been so bold to say it in the way he did, I have to remember that he never promised me anything, so I'm not comforted. There was no comfort for me thinking him becoming president, I was going to get that benefit. I've been paying my student loan debt.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you here, because I've got to give these last 2 minutes to Dr. Wolf. Let me tell you something. Politics doesn't work that way. This is not about my feelings. This is about power. This is about resources and the management of those resources. Now you have to demand that he do what you sent him to do, whether it was an implicit or an explicit understanding that you had. He's got to do that. People can't take anymore. Dr. Wolf, you are absolutely right. We have to look at all of these elements that added up to January 6th. And there is more where that came from, because now white people have black problems. Okay? Dr. Wolf,
but they didn't get rid of them, right? So,
no.
Yeah, look, I think everybody has problems in the U.S. now that come from a bad distribution of income, right? And one of the sort of immediate things that happened in the pandemic, and there's a lot to focus on, I get it, but is the distribution of income has gotten very rapidly worse during the pandemic, because you have a lower income, less educated communities that are literally left to dying to serve, right? They have to try to get a gig, bringing checks, snack mix to somebody who doesn't want to go outside because they're afraid of dying, right? And the equity markets have melted up on the cheap interest rates so that affluent people's luxury assets have performed very well. And so we've actually had a pandemic that added sort of salt to the wound, but increased the size of the wound on an inequality basis. Doesn't mean we can't address that issue, just means that we need to. And I think we do need a student loan solution. I just think we need one that isn't upward wealth redistributive. Because you do have a little bit of an issue if you just do all the total outstanding debt. It also means that the sort of third generation surgeon can get a $300,000 loan forgiveness, and some kid who worked 60 hours
1 minute
at Popeyes gets $11,000 loan forgiveness.
But you know,
right? Because that's all the loans he or she could get. So you do have to be a little careful to means test. I think.
But that's why. Well, hold on, because we're going to go up. We're going to have a couple of minutes on the other side of, on Facebook Live on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please, everybody, join me there. Join the new YouTube channel that I've got, the Santita Jackson Show. Please go and like and subscribe.
30.
We're streaming on the Santita Jackson page, Santita Jackson and Friends, the Reverend Jesse Jackson page, my YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show, and at the Santita Jackson Show on Twitter.
15.
Ooh. Stay right here. We're going to finish up this conversation with Dr. Max Wolf, attorney Ashley Harrington, and Dr. Reeves about student loan debt. Cancel the debt.
5.
Come on, everybody. We can do this. I'll be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. I just wanted you all to be able to wrap up. And thank you for staying. Attorney Harrington, I didn't realize you were still there. Dr. Wolf comes on every Thursday at this time, and I never know what he's going to say or do. But as you can hear, he's absolutely brilliant.
No problem. I enjoy it.
He doesn't. You're making me sound like I'm a horrible
Nor
producer.
do I.
He's making me sound like I'm a horrible producer. But I said, do you want to talk about this, this, or this? He said, I can talk about this, this, and this. I said, oh, okay. Well, we'll do that. But but people wanted to talk
Since
about.
I'm not really an expert in anything, I'm happy to talk about anything just below the 8.
No.
Random crap.
But this is a real. But this has. I mean, the reaction to President Biden's assertion was immediate, and people are hurting out here, Dr. Wolf. I mean, there's got to be space.
Oh, they're dying, right?
Well,
More than hurting.
They're dying, And there's got to be space for you at the table, for someone with your brilliance, compassion, and politics, moreover, to talk about, okay, a plan that's not upwardly distributive of wealth, of more wealth for the people at the top. But let's face it, that's only like 1 or 2% of the country. Everybody else down here is starving. Black folks who make people who make $100,000 a year, that's nothing in America today. I mean, let's keep it
right.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah. And it's literally a small percentage, even smaller probably, of the student loan folks, of the student loan people, right? So when we're talking about student loans, the number of high income, high wealth people is not high at all. That just doesn't exist. Those folks don't have debt. Their parents, that didn't happen. Why do they need it? So we're talking about people who are low income, low wealth. Some of them might be middle income or high income and still low wealth because of the systems in this country and inequities. And so even if, though, there are a few folks who happen to be high income, high wealth and get some relief, we're arguing for the 50K cancellation, right? We think that's the way you target it, right? You target it with the amount, not with these other caveats. Because anytime we put barriers up and say, oh, people with this income or people in this who meet these criteria, who is penalized the most? People of color and low income people who can't get access to it, right? That's what we see. The barriers don't keep out the folks that you don't want to get it. They keep out the folks you want to get it, because that's how barriers work. Everybody else will know how to get around it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's true. I think my point is just that.
Across the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think my point is that making school more affordable by subsidizing school more, not just by having people go into debt, is really important if you want to do the bigger, longer term fix.
Oh, I'm with you.
Right, so the sort of like a Jubilee model makes sense, right? A Jubilee model of saying, hey, let's sweep away some of the past issues here. Like, I'm not opposed to that. My point is, if we need nurses, and I picked that one because we are forced to import a lot of nurses, right? Because even in our kind of problematic quality of care, HMO managed world, we don't have enough nurses, right? So we know we need nurses. We know that's a good, solid job with a good path to the middle class, right? Where there's massive social benefit because it's a life of service to be a teacher, to be a nurse, right? In most cases anyway. So why aren't we massively subsidizing that, particularly in communities that don't have enough medical care, right? Which would be rural communities where there's actually a really serious shortage of medical personnel as a general rule in rural areas, as well as in urban communities of color, right? And then let's educate people from those communities to care for those communities on the real model of a hand up, not a handout. Because the unique health challenges.
For black doctors too, not nurses, doctors.
Absolutely.
Black doctors.
But you see, Attorney Harrington and Dr. Wolf, you heard what happened to Dr. Reeves. She signed up for that. And Dr. Reeves teaches not only high school in New York, she teaches college also. She follows her kids all the way until they get out of college. She takes the kids who the colleges don't want to have apply, who don't want to take these kids because they're at risk. She gets them through high school. She gets them into college, and this woman follows them straight through college and teaches them and gets them out. That's the kind of dedication she has. And you see what happened to her.
You should probably see if you can work with Jared Kushner.
Oh, maybe that'll help. But you see, but wait a minute. You see, they did the shell game on her. They did the shell game.
They did.
I mean, this.
So the other reason,
and maybe we do need to reach out to him.
The other reason for cancel that is for that.
As soon as you're done with your grieving period over Rush Limbaugh, I'd reach out to
Santita? Can I say something?
Girl.
If we clear some of the debt, that gives us the opportunity to fix the system, right? We can't fix it right now because there's 1.7 trillion, 44 million. Let's clear out some of the debt. Let's clear the debt for 75%. And then we can fix it. We can fix the system going forward. We can reinvest. We can make a debt-free college system. We can do all the things that you're talking about. But this part we have to do first to do that. And the reason why we keep talking about this is, again, we don't got to wait for Congress. Some of the other stuff, we have to wait for Congress.
Well, I mean,
true on the state houses, which have their own set of challenges, because state funding for public education is also not so uniform across the 50 states.
Yep, and has not recovered from the Great Recession. and is only going to go down again after this because of this pandemic.
But I would say that too. A way to build a broader coalition is you might mention that the federal government, particularly Republicans in Congress, have been hell bent on starving the cities for money, right? And starving the cities and states for pandemic relief guarantees educational cuts all the way through, K all the way through college.
It does, yep.
It actually does.
Well, you know what?
It does.
Look.
But can I just say, Santita,
yes, of course.
In New York, they let our high school kids know that they can go to college for free if they go to city. And then they put the restrictions on income, right? So what happens if a parent has 5 kids in college? They can't pay for every kid. So there's so many promises that have been made to our children and nobody's following through. And I feel like the greater majority is not holding all these people accountable. Right. And while it upsets me, I'm not excusing Biden. Please don't think, because I'm very upset about what he said, because now I'm thinking, where's my Elizabeth Warren? Right. I can't. I'm really wondering to myself, what is the expectation that they have of America's children in this country? That's what I want to know. Because if they're not willing to ensure that they're educated, then guess what? What future do you expect for this country? What do you expect? Because a lot of our kids don't go to college because they can't afford it. It's not that a lot of them are not willing. They cannot afford it. They're afraid of the debt.
Well, and they're also eliminating.
They're afraid.
They're eliminating vocational education. I mean, our children increasingly don't have options. We have eliminated Little League. So now the kids.
And the parents don't have options either, right?
They don't.
So if you want to help the kid, you also have to worry about the parents.
Absolutely.
And so I think
I'm
the
wanting
problem
the
with
door
these things
shut.
is you need a broader solution, right?
Well, and you know what? I'm needing someone to fight for Americans too. I mean, and not at the exclusion of being good global citizens. But I have a very dear friend, Lynn Coleman. He was the last president of the National League when the National and American League had presidents. African American guy too, wonderful human being. And one of the concerns that we saw at that time was that he was trying to keep Little League going in the inner cities. He said this is a way out and up for our kids. But you know what they've done? They've moved to South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. Why? Because they don't have to pay those kids as much. That's part of the reason they hated Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. Because he said, if you're going to come and pull my kids into the farm teams of Major League Baseball, you got to give them guaranteed money. They might not make it to the major leagues. In fact, most of them won't. I mean, just all of this, we cannot. My father often talks about having a bad case of need mo. People are just greedy. They need mo and mo and mo and mo and mo. They're just needy and greedy. This is ridiculous. I mean, look, I'm no Max Wolf when it comes to humor. I'm just saying this is not working here. Bad case of need mo. Bad case of it. Yeah, take it. Run with that. Reverend Otis Moss Jr., the father of Reverend Otis Moss III from Trinity United Church of Christ, he said to me something so profound, as he always does. He said, honey, remember this. God will supply your every need, not your every greed. We're seeing where the greed has gotten us with this disaster in Texas. That is all over the country. They're talking about Texas, but they got a problem in Oklahoma. They got a problem in Oregon right now, and Arkansas and Kansas. This is a mess. It's a mess. What are we supposed to do? I mean, and like you made the point, Dr. Wolf. People are killing themselves, shedding themselves of their earthly containers because they just can't take anymore. I am not justifying suicide. I'm not saying that. I mean, morally, no. Self-murder is not the way to go. But hey, you sure can rationalize it because people Their backs are against the wall. They have no place to go. And I just think it's needlessly cruel. Cruelty is never necessary, but it's cruel to give people no options. Dr. Wolf, Attorney Harrington, and Dr. Reeves. I mean, for them to pull the rug out from underneath you when you said, okay, well, I will teach and I will teach in a community that is vulnerable, quite frankly, you would have gone there anyway because that's who you are. And then you go to get some of your debt discharged and they say, well, there's no money here, so too bad. What? What? I mean, how does that work?
Yep.
And also that you should have a different system, right? So if you're trying to route more resources into a community or out of a community, then you should use the price signaling, right? So we like the market sometimes. That's actually a place where it can work sometimes, right? So you have a state-run policy, which not everybody loves, but you can say, hey, if we have overhang excess unmet demand in the space, let's subsidize people to go into that to meet that need, right? And I understand there's a delay and there's still some risk because just because there's a shortage in X or Y today doesn't mean there will be tomorrow, right? But then there's another thing which we haven't mentioned, which I feel like I should bring up, because I work in this area a bit too, which is with the artificial intelligence and the machine learning revolutions that are coming, there's going to be a hollowing out of a lot of the white collar world, not dissimilar probably to what we saw in the industrial world in the 80s and 90s. And so talking about retraining and finding proper places for people is going to become much more of a college grad, more educated, more affluent income community issue. And it's going to require a more kind of thought out intervention, which is why you see a lot of folks in the tech community looking at, minimum income guarantees and lifelong retraining. And the last thing I'll say is for a nimble 21st century economy, I think we should start thinking about education and career retraining that sort of not a story that ends when you're 18 or 22, because people are going to end up having to have more than one career and have some help to get back on their feet. And again, I don't say this is the only reason, but I guess I don't come out of it as morally focused a tradition in economics. It also just makes better sense. So if you invest a little bit in someone who becomes a beneficial member of society and she or he is healthier, more able to help others, more able to remain gainfully employed and support local businesses, it does have a huge multiplier effect in the future of the community. A positive multiplier effect.
Absolutely. I mean, look, of course, I'm going to pivot around the moral, but it just makes more sense. It makes good business sense. Henry Ford paid his workers on the assembly line enough money for them to buy the cars that they assembled. I mean, come on.
But Santita, it does sound great when you're saying that that people coming out into the workforce should be trained a certain way. However, our education system does not say that we should train our students for life. It says we should train them for that test.
But that's why
right?
why it's got to stop, because in advancing countries, that is what they do. That is what they do. Now, either we're going to move into the future or we are going to become a slave state. We already did that. It didn't work out well.
It has to be hands off, because corporate America is dictating education in the schools,
and we have to stop it. Because this is ridiculous. Betsy DeVos can't run those schools up in Michigan. Her charter school is the worst one in the state.
The worst ever.
Oh my! What?
Not just the state.
Oh my gosh!
The worst.
Look, they just said in Michigan, so I was just going to leave it right there because that's what I could go. I could reference the study and the articles on that. But I'm going to get closing thoughts from everybody here. Well, I have to verify, in case people come from me. Plus, I want to give the right information. I'm going to give Dr. Wolf the last word, but Attorney Harrington, I'm so glad you stayed with us today. Well, first of all, let me start with you, Dr. Reeves. Your elevator pitch, your closing thought.
Well, I'm hopeful, prayerful that at some point in time, those people who we elect into office will understand and see that our children should come first, not just in their words, but in their actions. And if we want to be a great nation, then we have to invest in our children, which means that they should not have to worry about being educated and coming out of that with debt. That is not beneficial to them. That is not helpful to them. And that is not in any way or form driving a great nation.
Attorney Ashley Harrington, Center for Responsible Lending. Oh, thank you for the work that you do, Dr. Reese. Thank you for the work that you do, Attorney Harrington. Thank you for the work that you do, Dr. Wolf. Attorney Harrington, your closing thought?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think this has been a great conversation. It's absolutely a values-based decision. But whether you value racial equity or you value economic opportunity and recovery, this has to be a part of the solution. If we're serious about helping communities of color, if we're serious about spurring the economy forward, debt cancellation has to be a part of it. And there's a very real and easy way to do this. There are not many things in policy. I work on policy. I'm not an economist. I'm not any of these. I'm not an educator. I work in policy. There are very few policy things that we can get done that have this level of impact that should be this easy to do, right? And so when you see a solution like that, why not? Why not? And we have a chance to fix a system that has never worked and that has not worked for Black people and brown people. It's simple, and then we can move forward. There is a lot to be done at every point in the system, but this is absolutely something that can and should be done, and we can walk and chew gum. We can cancel student debt and fix higher ed going forward. We can fix K-12. Why can't we do all these things that?
It's just not smart, in my way of thinking, Dr. Wolf, to keep all this many people poor. I mean, that's crazy. It's just socially unsustainable.
Amen.
It's crazy. Dr. Wolf, your final thought?
Yeah, so look, I enjoyed learning from and seeing the world a little bit through the eyes of your guests and enjoyed the conversation. I guess to me, the story is a little bit more inflected by my educational area, but I don't disagree. My point would be the following. It's a very competitive world. It's a bit of a winner-take-all moment in history for various countries. If we are going as a group, America, to be successful, we're going to have to be a we, not an I. And we're going to have to make sure that the best and the brightest have a path forward. And when so few people can rise up, we couldn't possibly tell ourselves we're doing that.
Mic drop on all of what you've had to say. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's why we love Dr. Wolf every Thursday at the bottom of the second hour of the show. It's just, you are a real gift. And you are a real gift, Attorney Harrington, and you are a real gift, Dr. Reeves, and everybody here. You all are such gifts. Please like and share, like and share, like and share. But I want to thank you all for being with us today. I hope that you've gotten something good out of this show. We're going to talk, as I've been watching the comments, we're going to talk about what you should do if your power goes down, what you should have at home. I'm going to pull together a show about that because we need to know that. You need to have flashlights, battery operated radios, and things like that. We will talk about that because anything could happen at any time. And that is what we're seeing in Texas. In fact, I was laughing with Commissioner Ellis, but it really wasn't funny. We were laughing 2 weeks ago because he was running off the phone. He was doing Reverend Jackson's Keep Hope Alive show. And he said, look, y'all, it's 65 degrees. Because I was telling him it was whiteout conditions. It was snowing like crazy here in Chicago. He said, well, I'm just going to go on, but it's my 65-degree weather and bike. And wow, look what happened 2 weeks later. I mean, we're all a blink away from our life completely changing. We are just one step away from everything being very different, and we need to keep our mind on that. And we are also going to continue this discussion another time about student loan debt. But I'm going to get one of your sorors in Greekdom because we are part of the Divine Nine, Attorney Harrington. I'm going to get my line sister on here so she can talk about how, with you, and if I can get Dr. Wolf because he's very, very busy, we got to talk about how we can, even when you have this debt, how you can make it. Because to me, that's the thing. Because if just got to figure that out. And don't forget, President Barack Obama and his wife, the First Lady, were in massive debt until he became U.S. Senator and really until he became president. They had huge student loan debt. I mean, Mrs. Obama would tell me, look, I am working my job at the University of Chicago, and much of between my student loan debt and my child care, I don't have much left. Harvard trained lawyer.
Yeah, it's rough.
This is rough.
Yep.
You know, so I mean, come on.
Yep.
This is not we don't want to turn people into wage slaves. Well, even though that's part of the great tradition, the great American tradition, it needs to stop. We can not just do better, we need to do right.
I wouldn't call them wage slaves because people don't have W-2 employment anymore. They're gig slaves now.
How about that? Mic drop on that. This needs to stop. This is just unacceptable, and it's unsustainable, Max. This is not going to work. Americans just are really, we're a hardy bunch. We're not cut out for this. We're not. Now, I don't want us to storm any more capitals and do what happened on January 6th, but that was part of the genius and divinity of Dr. King. And he led a bloodless revolution, a nonviolent revolution, and he was insistent upon that, which is unique in the American experience. We have got to do right, not just better. We've got to do right. When you go to the hospital, you don't want them to make you better. You want them to make you well. So think about that. Let's make America well.
Yep.
Okay? Make it well.
Yep.
Let's do that.
I
So I love you all. I love you, Max Wolf. I love you, Ashley Harrington. I love you, Marnie Reeves. Thank you so much. And I love
love you
everybody.
back.
And again, happy birthday, Joyce Anderson. Hey, 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 girl. I hope you have a great day, you birthday girl. That's right. Sending y'all all my love. Everybody. I see you, Effie. I see you, Bab. I see you, Daryl. I see you, D-Ray. I see you, Tanya. Is it Clarissa? That's right. Medi, all of you, and everybody who was before. I love you, love you, love you. I will see you tomorrow morning on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you. God bless you, Max. God bless you, Ashley. God bless you, Marnie. We are out of here. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for a great show. See everybody. God bless.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.